I would like to talk to you today about a word that has come into current usage. Only recently, I think, maybe a few years now, because I never came across this word much earlier. And the word I'm talking about is the word martyr. In Malayalam, it's called, that word is raktasakshi. Now, this word is used to describe those of our soldiers in the armed forces, the army and the paramilitary forces too, who are killed in some kind of action on the borders. They're killed in action, that's for sure. And so, when their bodies come home, they are referred to as martyrs. And this has come into usage of recently, a few years from now. And they're called martyrs, with all those emotional overtones and things like that. Well, you're probably used to this, and therefore you ask, what's wrong? Yes, wait a minute. Legitimate question, because you're used to this. This is the way it is. They are described. First of all, before I proceed, I must say that in 2022, the Army headquarters specifically asked everyone, including definitely the government and definitely the press and others, not to describe these fallen soldiers by the term martyrs. They said that clearly. And they said this, you should desist from them. And if you want to use some terms, use some of the terms that we use in our bulletins and follow that generally. You know that the army, not only this our army, but all the armies of the world don't put any emotional overtones in the way they report their casualties. It is killed in action, missing in action, and very matter-of-fact things. Therefore, in that circular of 2022, Army headquarters said, at the most you may call them fallen heroes. The Army wouldn't normally use that term, but if the press wants a little bit of emotion, fallen heroes. That was a very specific circular. And this does not seem to have been followed, and we have to conjecture why. That is not the subject of this talk. The term martyr, the word martyr, has a definite religious connotation. No doubt at all about that. And this term martyr means dying for your faith, for your religion, declaring your religion and dying for it. And this term martyr is current in the Abrahamic religions and traditions. The Abrahamic religions are those religions who consider Abraham as a prophet. And the Abrahamic religions are Christianity, of course, Judaism, and yes, Islam. These are probably the only religions of the Abrahamic tradition. I can speak a little about the Christian martyrs, the early Christian martyrs. When I speak, I neither claim the authority or the gravitas of a bishop or archbishop. That's not my business today. That we can, if necessary, leave it to them, wherever they need to. That is for them. But I do know that The early Christian martyrs of, say, 30 AD, 40 AD, 200 AD, and so on, all these martyrs, the martyrs, died the most painful death that you can ever imagine, the most horrific and cruel type of, shall we say, execution, if you like, killing that is ever known. And therefore, all the solid thing about the early martyrs, very sad thing, very, revolting to the mind and spirit, that is there, replete with this. I want to give you an example, just an example, I couldn't give more. I remember the case of Lawrence. All these martyrs become saints. They are declared saints because they quote death, declaring their faith. Okay. Lawrence and all these people seem to have just a little bit of eccentricity in their ways, these martyrs. At least this martyr had. So, when he declared his faith to the magisterial authority of that time, whoever it was, and they definitely were not irregulars, they had a system there in place. When he declared the faith to his persecutors or to the magisterial authority, he said, I have defended the faith and will defend the faith. I have propagated the faith. He said, then according to our laws, you're going to be condemned to death, and you will be receiving death. Now, he said, if that be so, let me have the most painful death ever. And there were lots of ways of inflicting pain in those days. We're going back to all that, those ages. And he seems to have said that he would prefer to be roasted alive. Just imagine that. And when this was, shall we say, done by the authorities, so be it, they do it. When they put him on that, roasted, there's kind of heat on that, a plate and things like that. He seems to have said, now I am done with this part, therefore turn over my body so that the other portion can be roasted. I'm saying all this, and then there are many stories of the Christian martyrs. Fine, okay, let it be there. All of them have something of this kind. They declare their faith and they are executed. And they receive the punishment of death in the most cruel ways possible. Stoning to death and all that, stoning to death, all that kind of thing. Now, just form a picture of martyrdom and martyrs of the Christian faith. The other faiths and martyrs are more or less comparable. So, we will just go into this thing. Form a picture of what martyrdom means in the Christian faith and the history of the Christian faith. Now, ask yourself, what is the casualties in the army, those who get killed in action? What is it in the army? It is not comparable at all. This is a world of cruelty and all that thing that goes, horrified detail. That is a world, universal thing of honor, duty, orders. And the Indian Army is organized in terms of regiments, and regimental honor is very, very important. You have various regiments. You have the Madras regiment, you have the Dogras, you have the Gorkhas, where Sam Manekshaw belonged to that, and a whole lot of that. And of course, General Manekshaw, as he then was, he took pride in always having his, not only the regiment thing, but his Gurkha cap and all that. And so this is the way, regimental pride always. And the regiments had all the history of all those exploits, all the valor, all those who got killed, all the awards, the Paramveer Chakra, the Mahavir Chakra, Veer Chakra, all these things they had, all that. So they are imbued with not only regimental pride, regimental motto. The Madras Regiment had a motto of something that means duty until death. This was the thing. So also other regiments will be emphasizing, the motto will be emphasizing honor above everything else. Orders, everything, above everything else. This is the kind of army ethos. I'm giving you a kind of quick, shall we say, snapshots, so that you know that the other thing has nothing. It is another world of barbarism. Okay, leave it. This is what we are talking about. And when they go into battle, all these kinds of things that we talk about, the motherland and all that sort of thing, doesn't come in. They go into battle following the orders. They just go in there. Over all these years, the essential spirit of the fighting force of the army anywhere has been captured by Lord Tennyson in that very interesting and moving poem. This poem is about 1854 or thereabouts. He was talking about a battle during the Crimean War between the English forces and the Russian and Corsican forces. The charge of the Light Brigade. Now, someone had blundered in sending this brigade of that time, it's called brigade at that time, about 600 men, the Light Brigade. The message was meant for another fighting force. And they were asked to go in. And you know, the other enemy forces were there on very advantageous terrain up there, and these people had to march through what Tennyson calls the valley of death. And the poem says, and I just remember some lines of it because this is what I learned at school. Although they knew someone had blundered, theirs not to make reply, theirs but to do and die. The 600, they rode into the valley of death. They rode well, says Tennyson. No panic, they rode well. A cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, volleyed and thundered, but they rode on into battle. This is what the army is about. And when we speak of our army, a magnificent fighting force, truly magnificent fighting force, I must say that there is tremendous honor, heroism, following orders. That is the army ethos. So, when we bring down that, all those values to the level of what I first described, this martyrdom with religious overtones, it is a grave travesty of what the army stands for. And we should never be doing that. If, in spite of this, we still continue to do this. There can be, or I should put it this way, we can be forgiven if there are some conjectures why this is being done. And a possible conjecture is that this is being done for political reasons, for electoral gains perhaps. This is very hurtful for any citizen who thinks about this. This should not be. But if it continues this way, as it seems to have continued, we have to remind ourselves of what Humpty Dumpty said in that beautiful poem of Lewis Carroll, Through the Looking Glass. Humpty Dumpty said in a scornful tone, when I use a word, I mean what I choose to mean it is. Nothing more, nothing less. This is a poem of Lewis Carroll. If this is the way it is, that you choose to use the word the way you like it to be, or you want it to be, I have a simple submission to make. If this is the way you used the word martyr, I would say that we could think just a moment about manual scavengers who die the most painful death in our districts. In an answer in Parliament in 2023, the government minister stood up and said that there were about 415 scavengers, manual scavengers, who died cleaning up either the sewers or the dry latrines associated with the cleaning process. Manual scavengers have died, 415 of them. I know a thing or two about what the dry latrines are, most despicable thing if you like. They have to clean it with their hands and a small little tool. They have to take it. And then it is for them to then dispose it off somewhere else. And in the sewers, manually they have to clean those. They go down, and the most painful death, suffocation, that they suffer. So I would like to think that if you are using the word in that kind of sense, leaving the religious connotation and having a kind of loose meaning of it, I think the manual scavengers deserve to be called martyrs. But it worries me that this word is being used in this sense, despite the army headquarters saying clearly, never to use that term at all for those who die in battle or in an armed conflict. I worry because if the army and armed forces are being dragged in some way, emotion perhaps and so on, for political gains, we might just be in the process of eroding that very basic concepts in constitutional democracy. The control of the civil authority over the military, a cardinal principle This has been debated even in Parliament during the time of Jawaharlal Nehru, and in no uncertain terms it has been said that civil control over the military is basic and supreme, and there are absolutely no ifs and buts about it. This is during the time of General Timaya, the Nehru-Timaya dialogue and correspondence. So those who want to can look at it. All this is in proceedings of Parliament. So I say, we are on dangerous terrain. This is not good. Never should the army be mixed up with our politics. Never. This erosion of civil control over the armed forces should never happen. And there should be not even a beginning of a process of the risk of happening, of this very, very serious damage to constitutional practice. Please remember that the Commander-in-Chief of India's armed forces is the President of India, signifying in the Constitution as it is that civil control over the armed forces is something we take as very basic. Take care.